What's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of FemFlex Friday. Today, together with my co-host, Linda Murray, we're going to bring you a very interesting topic, and that is guidelines for bikini competitors from top coaches in the industry. And today, we have with us Kim Oddo and Damian Segovia. Guys, welcome to our show.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Amazing. Wow, what a industry. Have so much respect for both of you guys. I was just talking earlier about the way training and coaching, how it's evolving, that you guys are probably the last, not the last, but a lot of them that started in the beginning, they're no longer here. You guys have been here for the long haul.
Yeah, I mean, I think my first show was shortly after the Civil War. So I got an expanded volume there.
Yes.
But it's, when you go through the years and you see so many good trainers, and I'm obviously old enough to be Damian's dad, unfortunately. But you see so many good trainers, both A, that I admired coming up, like Keith Klein and, those guys, and B, the ones that are coming up now. And so it's been a fun time, and Damian and I have known each other for years.
Yeah.
And so it's fun because you almost grow together as family.
It's definitely...
And so what you do and how you, the people you meet, and all the people that I came up, even, Linda, when you were competing, that was kind of when the back end of my competing years.
Yeah, so I remember. That's why I asked this. Yeah.
So what weight class did you compete in? Because I presume there was just male bodybuilding at that time, right? And what level?
Yeah, it was just bodybuilding. My whole body probably weighed about as much as Damon's right leg. I competed at 154.
Okay.
And so,
middleweight, right? Middleweight?
Yeah, I was a lightweight.
A lightweight.
How many years did you compete?
I started, my first show was in 82. My last show was in 96.
Wow.
So right at about 14 years.
14
I did probably did about 26, 27 shows.
Wow.
I was one of those guys that was just like, I'm not going to stop until I got to win. 14 years.
Yeah.
So it took you 14 years.
Just about.
How about you, Damian? Tell us about your own competitive experience.
Well, I don't have much, to be honest. I did it when I got done with college. I was playing collegiate football and I had some injuries and retired. I entered a contest. We won't talk about what federation it was.
Okay.
It was actually it was pretty much what now men's physique is. It was more of like a model type like search for men. I did really well. I honestly didn't really enjoy that aspect of it, and I just kind of fell into helping people after that because I started getting a lot of attention, did some magazines, things like that. So people started asking me what I knew about bodybuilding. And at that point, I was very intrigued just from having a sports background. So I actually started helping some local competitors at the gym that I went to, which actually was at LA Fitness. And this was in like the early 2000s. And I did really well with those competitors, really like quickly. So that's how I kind of made like a small name for myself in my local area.
So were there males or female clients?
Females. So I only train females. Like I'm not quite as talented as Kim. He trains everybody. Doesn't matter what you are. I only train females. So only people that I work with are female athletes. And I started doing it as, I would say initially as a hobby, just because I needed something to focus on for myself since I lacked that competitiveness in sport due to my injury. So I naturally put all my effort into helping other people. And then over time, I realized like I can make a career out of this. And so that's what I chose to do at about the age of 27. I'm 43 now, going on 44. So close to 20 years as far as like hobby/profession.
How about you, Kim? What was your first female athlete? Do you remember her name?
My very first one was Lori Myron.
Okay.
That was back in like 88, 87, 88. She was my first female bodybuilder. And at that time, all they had was bodybuilding, men's bodybuilding, women's bodybuilding, and of course they had couples.
So, that's right.
That was such a beautiful
pairs, right?
Yeah, let's mix pairs. That'll be artistic. It'll be fun. And so I started with her, and then gradually then fitness came around, and I had Lori Vanneman and worked with Lori Vanneman for a number of years, and then went into I had picked up Kelly Ryan and Laura Mack and a lot of the upper end fitness girls. And then figure came around. And so I gravitated into figure and, started working with Nicole Wilkins and, a lot of my pro figure. And that's really where I got to meet Damon, because he was doing figure at the same time. And I admired a lot of the work of what he was doing. And then bikini came around. So naturally, it's like I'm one of those people who has to have my hand in every cookie jar.
Yes.
Like whatever comes out, I want to train. If it walks or crawls or rolls, I want to train it.
Well, that's really impressive to me. I was always thinking, that's so impressive that, I know women, we follow the rules, and if you tell us to do something, we're going to do it. But just impressed as men that you transition, that you have the ability to communicate and get across to the women what makes champions.
What I find even more fascinating is the fact that both of you basically have shaped all these divisions as they were growing, right? As they came along, you were talking like with the judges, right? With the athletes themselves, and you are the ones that helped them, that brought that image on stage. And it just occurred to me as you're saying right now, what a big part and what a contribution you had in that.
You evolve together, you evolve, the sport evolves, and you evolve with it. And so the two marry up and mesh together. And so it is a lot of discussion. It's a lot of talk. It's a lot of mistakes, and it's a lot of learning from that to learn where and how to get physiques to fit the protocol to because times will always change, whether it was bodybuilding, whether it was physique, bikini, bodies will always evolve up. Very seldom do things evolve down. Things always evolve up. So it was always about the evolution and making sure that you're keeping on pace with that.
You know what I love about this, and what Alina just brought up is I'm looking at this now and I'm having more of an understanding of your roles and the evolution of the way things change with with trainers and coaches. It's in a sense as if you're also a manager agent, because I would think it would be better to have my coach communicate with me something that they've had a conversation with other judges in the industry or just evolving. So do you see it that way? Do you kind of become, you're managers really? Because when you're a competitor, it's different from training a housewife, right? Because you're preparing them to be on stage, and you're managing and
choosing the shows for them and so on and so forth, right?
Explain your job so that athletes out there, competitors, have more of an understanding of the importance of having you, more than just it being about their diet, their training, their posing.
Damian,
go ahead, Kim.
Okay. There are more aspects to this sport mentally than there are physically.
I love it.
I think physically we can accomplish and achieve anything we set our minds to. The mental aspects of it can be very brutal. And I always tell everybody, it's not about being perfect. It's just about staying out of quicksand. It's staying out of, because there can be many pitfalls when you go through a career. Now, whether that's through what you learn about photo shoots or sponsorships or how you give back to the industry, as much as the image you want to display. What's the indelible mark you want to leave on the industry? That's your stamp. And so as trainers, it's our responsibility, and I hate to put it in this term frame, but the younger the frame, I think the more guidance. Then maybe around the late 20s, early 30s, okay, that's a little maturity. They learn, they get through some things. And then the mature end, the masters end, okay, they've been around, they've got it. But this young end needs a lot of grooming and needs a lot of, a lot of help with setting themselves up for success. So yeah, I think a lot of what Damian and I both do is we try to find the right situations to put people, to set them up for success.
Yes.
You never want to set your client up for failure.
That's right.
So a lot of that falls on our shoulders because we need to know where the right protocols are. We need to give them the right advice and to help them, to stay in positive lanes.
Yes.
And also too, for us, like it's important to put them around people that positive people, as Kim and I make sure that our team members actually try to help one another and actually want to help one another, just because I would say unfortunately, there's a lot of negative people sometimes that trickle in and out of the sport just because of their frustration. So with the young people, if you allow them to get in a circle that's not conducive to them being successful, they're not going to be, and you lose a lot of really good talent in the sport, and that affects it at all levels. That affects the NPC promoters, it affects us as trainers, supplement companies. So Kim and I, we both work very hard to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure our athletes not only look a certain way, but like he's talking about, control and help that mental aspect so they can be successful. Because for women, I would say the majority of it for them is mental for sure. He would probably say a little bit more on the male side, but when it comes to women, the mental component is huge.
And which divisions do you have the highest number of competitors in, Damian?
I would say it's an even split for figure and bikini, and then obviously and then fitness. There's not as many athletes, and obviously I've helped Whitney for her whole career and a few people here and there. But my split's even between bikini and figure, and then I would say Kim, you're probably
how about
Kim
you,
very
Kim?
much.
Yeah.
It's a bit, I'm mainly bikini.
Okay.
A lot of what I have right now is bikini. And then between my wellness, my figure, my men's physique, my classic men's physique, it's sort of spread. Those are kind of spread out a little more evenly. I'm not tilted any one way or the other. If, obviously the majority of what I do right now is probably my bikini.
So let me ask you this, if that is the majority part, what's the ideal body structure for bikini? How would you describe that?
Well, bikini is it's not about being overwhelming. It's not, because bikini is not the structure of what women's physique or figure. It's not about an A-frame structure. Is it not? It's about balance. It's about femininity, and it's about projection.
But
so much of what bikini is the ability to project to the judges all this package wrapped up in one and then tied in a bow that looks phenomenal. So usually, there are so many different, obviously I've been extremely blessed to work with 3 bikini champions, Olympia champions, and they were all very different. Sonia Gonzalez was the first one. She was straight off the beach look. Yeah. And then you had Angelica, who is very athletic. So very athletic, very toned, very shapely, but still very feminine. And then you have Janet, which is the very feminine, very elongated lines, just a different portrayal of a structure. So even though all 3 are probably prime physiques that everybody would love, I think the one characteristic that they all have is they're very feminine in how they carry themselves. They project themselves very, femininely and very athletically, and but they're all toned and shaped and structured in a way.
I love it, and it's fascinating. And we're gonna come back with a question for Damian after this commercial break. And we're back. Damian, we're just talking about the bikini, the structure for bikini. What's the ideal structure for bikini? And then as Kim told us, there is no such a thing as structure. But I have this particular case when I'm saying this girl comes and her waist is naturally too wide. So that in my mind, that's what I call the structure issue. So if your waist is too wide or your shoulders are too wide, right? Is that a moment where you take the athlete and put it in a different division?
I mean, I would say if they have a wide waist, they're probably going to have a hard time in figure, just because you really can't hide your waistline in figure, because you do have quarter turns that you just can't hide those. Whereas in bikini, Kim's probably had a lot, and so have I. I've had a lot of women with very wide waistlines, but if they never show it, the judges are never going to actually see. So when they come out, what I would do is make sure they do a very good job at hitting their poses and not squaring up to show that waistline. And then if they have a very broad upper body, then obviously I'd tone down their shoulder training and then make sure when they pose, they're not opening up very, very wide and trying to project their shoulders much wider than they really need to, almost like they're trying to hide it. I think years ago, girls were trying to cover themselves with hair over their shoulder. And then as Kim knows, that got kind of carried away. That just like everyone had hair everywhere and you couldn't see anything. But the nice thing about bikini is you can hide a lot. So if you do have some structural flaws, you can hide it. Whereas in figure, you can't. There's no hiding. Everything's very straightforward.
Wow, I love this information. Now that's educating us, because I had no clue that you could, hide more in bikini than in figure, as far as like a wide waist.
To say, Kim, balance from front to back, right? How does that translate in a bikini division vocabulary? And do you have an example of something, an athlete that you could fix this balance, and how?
Well, part of what makes Damian and I trainers is we like being told no. We like being told you can't do that, because then it brings that part of you out that goes, oh, yes, I can. It's like somebody telling Linda, you're not going to win 2 Olympiads. Oh, really? Watch. So we like that challenge. So when you get athletes and you get structures where you look and you think of it in quadrants, top to bottom, front to back. I'll use the perfect scenario only because it's relevant, but 2, it recently happened. Janet Leug fits this mold exactly perfectly, because Janet had that front side where you looked at her and you went, oh man, from the front, stunning, everything's
over.
Beauty lines. And then from the back, she struggled with balance top to bottom. Her glutes tend to sit a little lower. Her glutes were a little overpowering to her legs. So like anything you do, where you're going to start with what you're doing is you're going to start with, the dissect part of it. You're going to analyze that structure. And I know Damian does that with a lot of his athletes. We both start from analyzation. Okay, what's in balance, what's not in balance, what's good, what needs to be brought up to match the good. So with Janet, we lifted the glutes, filled her legs a little bit to balance the glutes to the lower body, widened the back a little bit to create structural balance top to bottom. And so you start doing all this, and it's like a little puzzle. You start to put all these little pieces. Sometimes it may take a year, sometimes 2 years. But when you get it right, then titles occur and titles happen. So Damian's absolutely correct. With structures, you got to kind of think of yourself like Picasso. It's like, give me something to work with. Let me play with it. Let me mold it. Let me shape it. And you can take a structure and a physique anywhere you want it to go. And then you work with the stage aspects of it. So you only show the judges what you want them to see.
You are absolutely right, because I was talking to a judge, and the judge was talking about, I think there was a particular competitor. I don't remember her name at the bikini, at the Olympia in the bikini division. And she stayed on stage for like 3 minutes. on her individual, and the judge was like, the more you show me, the more I'm going to dissect you and find your flaws. So present the good sides and get out. But Damian, if we were to talk about beauty and femininity versus athleticism in presentation on stage in the bikini division, how would you address that? How would you separate, or how would you combine that? Is it better to be beautiful and feminine, or are you going to be completely athletic? How do you see that?
I guess it just depends on your timeline of wanting success. Because obviously, if you're more just like very, very beautiful face, very, very feminine, most likely you probably aren't going to have as much muscularity to your physique. And regardless of the division, we're still in the IFBB, so we are still a bodybuilding federation. So you still have to have a good amount of muscle in bikini, just not quite as much as the other divisions. So if you're looking to make your mark more quickly, then obviously you being more athletic is going to give you a little bit more advantage. You're going to probably get a little bit more success quicker. The femininity part, it's something that's obviously important, but a lot of women can play that up by having proper hair and makeup, which, Kim and I both do, as far as being very particular about who our athletes work with, the way they pose and present, their image on stage to the judges and to the crowd. So a lot of that can be blended just by posing, hair, makeup. But for me, if I had a preference, that's tough. Like, obviously, if you have both, you're like Kim, you get 3 titles. You're like me, you have 1 Bikini Olympia title. If you get both, then it happens a little bit quicker. So I don't know, maybe Kim can answer better, which is the better of the two, but I would probably pick athletic. That's just me being an athlete as my background.
Kim, what would you pick?
Structure is always, how can I put this politely? Beauty can be a God's gift. And yet it can still be worked up with what you do with setting the girls up with makeup and hair. So genetically, everyone is going to have a certain predisposition to where their bodies are, where their looks are, and what they bring to the table. Then you want to maximize those abilities. I think Damian's absolutely right. Structure is the most important thing, because you can tend to make beauty come around with a few little tweaks and adjustments, maybe a show or two. Structures, it could take 2 or 3 years. So focusing on the physicality of things first, really getting a physical look to be where you want that athleticism, the degree of muscularity, the conditioning, and then bring that package of how you wrap it. It's like everybody loves the prettiest package at Christmas. Well, same thing on stage. We love that really glammed up look that just jumps out at you. And so I would agree with what he was saying with, probably the physical part first, get the structural, the hard work done, and then continue to improve and work the beauty end of it till you get that exactly where it's matching up to what you're doing physically.
And Kim, I was very intrigued because I heard you talking at one point about aggressiveness when it comes to the presentation on stage, which is a little bit of contradictory to me, because this is bikini, right? So when I hear bikini presentation and aggressiveness, I want to know what you mean by that.
Because I don't want my athletes to walk on stage and just be another girl posing on stage.
Okay.
That's not okay. It's like, and when I say be aggressive, bring your personality out. We each have, when I worked with Amanda Latona, that was one type of personality that we tried to bring that out. And Angelica was another type of personality that we try to bring out. And Janet's another type of personality. And Monica Brandt, when I worked with Monica was a whole different demeanor. So when you work with the athletes, when I say be aggressive, I want them to bring their personalities to the stage, because I want the judges to know more than just a body on a stage. I want them to get a feel for who this individual is and who they are. And to don't sit back and try to let something come to you. Go get it. Go out there and get it and make it happen and work aggressively toward, because sometimes I think we, as athletes, the athletes can sometimes become a little tentative, or they can become overwhelmed by other people who are on the stage with them. And so it's like, no, don't be over. You go get them. Go out there, be aggressive, make it happen, but do it in the framework that fits your personality.
Wow.
Don't try to be what you're not, because that kind of shows up in the wrong direction.
And I do agree when you put your personality that it makes the presentation, the sport itself, more entertaining for the public as well, right? We were just talking about this topic with Whitney Jones when we were talking like, what is the difference between a beautiful and entertaining routine and a routine that follows all the steps and all the mandatory moves, but it's just the routine without that personality, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I definitely see it. And that's what I really love. I know with me, during my years of competing and coming from having a cheerleading background and being a professional cheerleader, I really understood the importance of, some of us, like with bodybuilders, we can get too much into just the training and the dieting. Everything is important. And I love watching the bikini competitors on stage and those subtle differences. I can see their personalities, see them coming out. And I like you pointing out, Kim, the importance of aggressive, and that's what we use when we talk about athletes, when we talk about, bikini figure fitness. And thank you for educating us on that. That's, just amazing.
So there was at some point, I think 2 years ago, I don't remember if it was Chicago or Tampa, but the bikini winner of the pro class, right? Bob was the MC and he interviewed her. And I thought she was joking, but she was not. So he said, do you want to say anything to the public? And she said, thank you so much. It has been the hardest 3 weeks of my life preparing for this show. And my face dropped. I was like, she's joking. No, she was serious. So Damian, what is the shortest time you could bring one newcomer competitor on stage in a bikini division?
Newcomer or veteran? Like just
newcomer,
first time?
your first time. How long did it take?
I mean, you would have to be lucky to pull off 8 weeks, unless that person was just living under a rock and no one has ever seen that person and they were just a genetic specimen. And sometimes that happens, but even then, to get them to develop comfortability on stage with their routine and their energy would be near impossible, to be honest. They get it's very walking on stage for these girls, for a lot of them, even the veterans. It's a very it's nerve-wracking, to be honest. It's nerve-wracking. Yeah. So I would only feel comfortable, me personally, 12. That's where my comfort is. Ideally, if I can have more time, great, 8 weeks, but you would have to be above and beyond most other girls that I've seen as a newcomer on stage for me to feel comfortable putting my name behind it and putting you on stage. I would talk to you about taking more time.
I like that.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, and I completely understand that. I watch, and I said this from the very beginning with bikini division, and when people would try to make a joke as if they don't train hard or don't prepare, and I'm like, listen, just being an athlete and all of the different things that I've competed in, just going on stage, and that's part of the problem, is people underestimate presentation. They underestimate presentation, and I know when I'm looking at the bikini lineup, from the moment that woman walks on stage, I'm looking at everything. I do that with women bodybuilders, and sometimes I get beat up because the bodybuilders want to go and present something different. I'm like, look, you have to treat this the same way the bikini competitors. It's about from head to toe, your hair, your makeup, knowing what angles, the judge's eye, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm never looking for who's the biggest, who's the most muscular. I'm just looking for that package, that person that sparkles and shine, and everything just flows. So.
You're absolutely right, Linda, and that is a great topic. But talking about all-encompassing techniques, Kim, I know that you mentioned mental coaching, right? So how do you approach the mental coaching when it comes to that? How about honesty? Are you brutally honest, or are you Nicely honest.
Well, you better be brutally honest, because if you're not honest in the beginning, it's going to bite you in the end. So
Okay.
along the line, they're going to come back and go, "Why didn't you tell me?"
No sugarcoating then, huh?
So it's always been my belief that when you're working with clients, and if you're honest with them from the start, and you lay out, usually what I like to do is I like to kind of lay out a portfolio and say, okay, here's what I see. Here's things I think we can work on. Here's things I think we can improve. You know, you may have X amount of time that it may take to get there, but then there's all these other influencers and aspects that are also wrapped up into what you can do. So your surroundings and how, because I always tell everyone, usually the success of program is not the individual, it's everything around the individual.
Yep.
So if the surroundings are in a very comfortable place and you set them up for success by being honest with them and letting them know, because I'm sure Damian can tell you, you get your consultations where someone says, I've never done a show before, but my goal is I want to be on the Olympia stage.
Yeah.
Like, okay, God bless you, but there's a lot of space there.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of groom them, you know, but it's about putting the truth in front of them and then giving them time to process it, but don't hit them all at once with everything, because then it can become too overwhelming and you don't want your clients to give up. So you just kind of feed them little bits and pieces of truth throughout the course of what you do. And then by the time you get to the stage, you've been honest through the whole process.
I like that.
Yeah, we have the best in the business here. You're learning
Absolutely.
a lot. Yeah, learning a lot from you guys.
And we'll be right back after this commercial break.
Joe Weider's Olympia here in Orlando, Florida.
A little bit strange coming out of Las Vegas for all of those years.
Good evening, and welcome to the event that nearly never happened.
There's been an absence of a particular group of people on this stage that are back tonight. Tonight I'm here to say, welcome back to Miss Olympia.
And we're back with a question for Damian. Damian, what is the typical weight difference in between on-season and off-season for a bikini competitor?
Oh, wow. They give me this question, Kim. This is going to give me a lot of trouble. My preference is, I would say, anywhere from like the 7 to 10 pound range. That's my preference, just because I feel like if you get much heavier, it's really hard to see what's going on with your physique. And with bikini, you're not just trying to add tons and tons of muscle like where you would figure or any other division. So you need everything in bikini is about lines and the flow and the symmetry of everything. So if you have an abnormal, like a high amount of body fat, sometimes it's really hard to see what you're working with when they actually start to diet and strip that down. And sometimes you see that when you're really focused on glutes, their glutes get really put on a lot of body fat and they diet down, and you realize we didn't fix some of the problems that we had last year. They're still there, or some of the imbalances with some of the muscularity and how it flows. So for me, I would say 7 to 10 is my comfortability. I think that's very attainable if you do things properly and you have proper post-show guidance, which I think a lot of competitors don't put a lot of value in, and or some of like maybe some of the newer maybe coaches, maybe some of the older, but I know Kim and I are very, very regimented on focusing on our athletes post-show, making sure they're doing things properly to set themselves up for success right afterwards. So,
And thank you. And Kim, do you have the same view on it?
Yeah, I mean, usually I go at that pound per week, you know, because if you're using an old barometer of 3,500 calories above and beyond what you do on a daily basis, you know, for 1 pound of body fat, that puts you at about a 500 calorie deficit per day. So I don't like going over that. So usually if a client's got 12 weeks, I like 12 pounds. If they've got 11 weeks, then 11 pounds. So if you stay at that pound per week mark, like Damian said, it's not just about the, stripping the body fat down. It's about protecting structure and being able to work with lean muscle tissue. So if you do start at too high of a deficit, then at some point in the structure, either something's going to get out of balance or you're going to lose muscle somewhere you don't want to lose muscle. And so I think, he's in that same range, probably right around that pound per week. That's a very doable number without having to tax too much, because again, the mental part plays so big. So if you've got to lose 15 to 20 pounds in 12 weeks, it will mentally wear you down, because you have to push at a much higher intensity rate for that duration of 12 weeks.
It completely makes sense. But Linda, I'm curious, Damian, is there an exercise that you do not allow your bikini clients to do? One exercise that it's a big no-no, never touch it.
Man, Kim, I'm getting all the questions that all the people online are going to come at me about. So I would, heavy squats and heavy deadlifts, because obviously you're going to engage that core. And when you really are focusing on keeping your waistline small, going too heavy in squats, traditional, free weight, back bar squats and deadlifts, to me, puts a lot of strain on that core area, especially the lower back, the erectors, and that's going to increase. Now, granted, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to probably hit my social media up and be all over me about how I'm incorrect, but I know what I see with athletes, especially at the upper elite level that, Kim and I have athletes. That's something I don't go for, it's just, I advise against it.
So
and probably really, really heavy hip thrust. I think that got really popular. It got really popular on social media. And again, if you're lifting 400 pounds in a plank, what do you think supporting that weight? Your core. So again, then I'm also careful. So I'll be interested to hear what Kim says. So
and we've never seen a small-waisted power lifter.
You're
That's
right.
True. Absolutely.
They don't exist. Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%, because bikini is about waistlines, glutes, and shape. And so if you're not careful, because a lot of times we don't think of how one thing interacts and mixes with another thing. So I tend to be with movements for glutes and waistline, I tend to be much more isolative in my thought process. I like to isolate the areas much better without engaging those assistance groups like abdominals or lower back, because it is going, I'm not and like Damon says, probably going to get me in trouble, but I'm not a big proponent of squeams, only because I think that cinching motion for a longer duration of time can create some internal things that you may not want to have happen with digestion and, your
And what do you mean, like longer duration of time? For example, if somebody wears it for 5-6 hours a day within 8 weeks before their show, is that something that would be okay from your point of view, or not at all?
I mean, for me, I allow my clients to wear it like during their cardios and their training session for support, because some of them like it keeps their waist in, but to wear it 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, I think, and then going for 8-9 weeks, I think that constant cinching somewhere, it actually, just my opinion, but I think it actually weakens the core. Because it disengages the core, because the support of the squeam is taking away what your core would do from a balancing standpoint. Now, I like to focus on the balancing of my core, because I want one side to be balanced to the other with their hip flexors and their serratus and obliques. But when you use a squeam, you take all the pressure off the core. It disengages the core. I think you can actually create muscle atrophy that way.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
I had clients and in the past and friends who would sleep in it day and night.
Oh yeah. It's like their pacifier.
I was like, something's going to happen to your organs at some point. That's not healthy.
No, it's really not, because it creates dysmorphia.
Yes.
In other words,
I agree.
The human body, especially with a female physique, it's not meant to be this to this to this.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It becomes too much of almost a cartoonish figure. It doesn't look real. It doesn't look like it's something you would want to attain.
Oh, Kim, I know everything about it. Do you know how hard it is? You know, because you are a bodybuilder.
I know. We didn't have them in our day.
No, we did not. I almost did not. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And like, oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, we
so
never
what do you?
had all that.
No, we
But
did not.
The good part of it is that, Linda, I think we learned how to manipulate physiques and bodies. You know, whether you were a competitor or a coach, you learned how to do things through technique, through autonomy, through what you do with anatomy and how you and how to protect things. And so it taught you through over the course of the years how to be able to do things with the bare minimum without needing to bring in,
all these gadgets
there to try to create something.
So I want to wrap up the talk about the bikini division with this particular scenario. Let's say we have one competitor, a person who's never competed, but she's interested in competing in the bikini division. And in between both of you, I would like to know 3 to 4 things that are definitely a must in the situation where they cannot afford a coach, but they want to get on stage and they want to be that local competitor. What are those 3 or 4 things that are absolutely, they cannot miss it, important, paramount in their preparation without a coach?
Go ahead, Damian. I'll let you take it.
No,
Damian,
that's all.
and you guys don't say get a coach. Not that.
I was thinking.
was
I'm
thinking.
like, oh man.
We'll go to Kim then.
I think you first off, it starts with research.
Okay.
Everything has to start with research and study. You have to look, if you don't have a coach, then look at what the upper athletes are doing. Look at how they're training, where their thought processes are with nutrition, what you have to educate yourself, because without a good foundation, you're not going to have a good finish. The foundation has to be strong, and that foundation is going to start with knowledge. So research and study and come up with a game plan before you ever get going. Number 2, make sure that your nutrition is solid, because that is about 65 to 70% of your battle. As most of us have learned through the course of time. Nutrition can make or break a whole program. So your nutrition has got to be solid, whether you're doing a macros or you're doing a structure, or, you're a little higher carb, lower carb, wherever you set your macronutrients out or what you do, that nutrition is your second most important thing, because that is your energy and that is your look through the whole process of where you're going. Then thirdly, your training. And make sure that you put your training program to fit your structure, so that you make sure you're emphasizing your weaknesses and you're keeping your good things stable and where they are. You just bring the weakness up to match the strengths. And so you make sure you get your body to fit the protocol. And then lastly, stage. Make sure you do your homework on hair, on makeup, on tanning, on posing. And again, it goes back to, you really have to educate and learn. So if you maximize those 4 areas, you maximize your knowledge area, you maximize your training, your nutrition, and your cardio, and your stage, if you learn as much as you can and implement, then your chances of being successful is going to be good.
And too, I just thought, Kim, the NPC puts on free clinics throughout the whole U.S. Almost every state. It's there's a lot now. Back, 10 years ago, there wasn't as many, but now there's so many NPC free seminars that you can attend and talk to top athletes, judges, promoters. So I think going there, finding one, even if you have to travel a little bit, is probably a huge resource there for you to utilize for free. So I definitely would say look into that.
Absolutely, that's a great resource.
Online. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a great resource. And Linda, I would really like to wrap this up with the talking a little bit shortly about the new division that we're having, the wellness division, right? Do you guys have any new clients from that division getting ready this year?
Currently, I have about 15 or 20.
Okay.
It's a little slower right now because some of my clients that are in South America that are in Colombia and Chile and Brazil. They're a little slower right now because their countries are a little more locked down with where they are with COVID. But I've got currently about 15 or 20 people. Wellness, just like when every other division that came along, is going to evolve. In my opinion, and again, just my opinion, it is the most genetically dispositioned of all the divisions.
You're right.
Okay.
I mean, you are structurally built for that because they aren't balanced. Because if they were balanced top to bottom, they'd be figure, or they would be women's physique. And they're not. It's not about muscle density in the lower body, or you would again be women's physique. It is more about fullness and curve, but yet the disproportion bottom to top with the little small waistlines. So they're kind of that blend between, okay, they're a little bigger than bikini up top, but they're not quite as dense and full as women's physique or figure in the lower body. So it really messes, because as trainers we want to think balance. Right. It messes with your head because it's balanced.
So talking about Damian, talking about that exercise that you don't do, how do you make big legs and glutes without squatting and doing all of that in order to keep the waist tiny? How are you going to do it?
Like Kim said, I don't want to say it's not possible, but genetics play a huge role. So naturally, the women that have maybe played soccer their whole life, rode horses, anything that just built really, really dense muscularity to their lower body is something you look for in a wellness athlete. Just because what I found when you tend to try to build the lower body, a lot of the wellness girls start to look more figure-ish and or women's physique, because they get that typical separation in their legs when they're training them. And if you look at wellness, their legs are really full, but they don't have a lot of separation. You don't necessarily see all the details as you would in some of those other divisions. So to be honest, it's still a learning process. It's still a learning curve. Like my assistant who works for me, Renee Harshey, she was the first ever wellness pro winner, and she won Tampa 2 years ago. That was before the Olympia qualification. And it's the same thing we're doing with her. Her body has grown a lot. Her lower half has grown a lot, but it's a lot of learning. You know what I mean? For me, it's a learning curve, especially as being an American coach versus somebody who maybe coaches women through Brazil and things like that, where that's your pool of women, and we're all wellness girls. So it's I think for some of us it's going to be a learning curve, and it is for me. I have no problem saying that. So
and we know very well that whenever we're talking about imbalances in a body on the long run, right, Kim? It's always posing some questions and some issues. So do you see anything or any points where these new athletes would need to be very careful in the way they train so they don't create, like, let's say, not life-threatening, but health-threatening issues with these unbalances, making them too big?
Well, you know, how you train to get there is the most important thing. So if you're putting your body in vulnerable positions, then your chances of injury is going to happen. So getting a pinched disc or getting nerve injuries or knees or hips, you have to be careful about the form and function of how you do things. And like Damian was saying, even though we may not believe in heavy squats, you can change the function of squat so it has a back pad, or you keep your back stable and straight so your butt doesn't tuck under the bar. That takes and disengages and pulls the core out of it. Your body line is straight. You are protecting your lower back now. So I don't think you're going to run into a problem with health as far as, well, my lower body's a little bigger than my upper body. I don't think that will hurt from a health standpoint. But I do think how you train to get there, that can be where you got to make sure if you're doing deadlifts, your lower back is in a vulnerable place. If you're doing heavy, behind the neck barbell squats with glutes coming under and you're doing a heavy extreme amount, joints can take a beating. So you have to be, as a female athlete, you have to be a little more protective because your muscle recovery and your natural testosterone levels are kind of not like a guy's is, where there's a lot more muscle density there for support. So with these girls trying to go as heavy as they can, they don't have that same hip support and that same joint support. So their tendons, their ligaments, their joints, they can be in vulnerable positions. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
this is fascinating, guys. I love it. I loved all the technicalities that you shared with us from your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you so much, Oddo and Damian,
Yes.
Segovia. You guys are awesome. We really
Yeah.
appreciate your time and sharing all of your knowledge with us and with our viewers.
Yes, thank you for educating us. We've learned a lot.
Thank you so much, and thank you guys out there. And we will see you all next time in our new episode of FemFlex Friday.
See you guys. Goodbye.
Guys.